War reporter Sebastian Junger has spent years in some of the most violent places on Earth, documenting up close the details of human conflict. His signature works are Restrepo and Konregal, feature documentaries about a remote military base in Afghanistan, an infamous outpost of nearly non-stop combat. Junger followed those soldiers once they came back home, and he noticed something strange. They missed the war.
It's, in a weird way, as dangerous and scary as it was out there, it was also one of the happiest times of my life. And I think that's true for a lot of those guys too.
Why would an American man, having returned home to a land of plenty, of safety, of the infinite stimulation and comforts of modern life, ever miss this? Junger says soldiers are longing for the tribal ties of combat. That war, as horrible as it is, still feeds a natural human need for belonging.
Humans are social primates. We're wired to belong to groups. It's because our survival depends on it. We can't run very fast. We can't climb trees very well. We don't have sharp teeth. We don't have sharp claws. We're totally defenseless in the woods. It's as if we're children in the woods, right? We're completely vulnerable in nature, completely vulnerable. But in a group, we can defend ourselves and we can actually dominate, right? So a group of Stone Age hunters can take down a woolly mammoth. And if you're not part of that group, you die. You can't gather enough food, you can't defend yourself, and psychologically you die. Our psychological health depends on a feeling of meaning and protection and safety and closeness and honesty that comes from the close proximity of others, particularly other people that we care about. One of the downsides of a frankly amazing modern society, right, is that this modern society has basically solved all the survival problems, the daily survival problems of safety, defense, gathering food, hunting, shelter, has solved all of those problems for people, and they don't need a group in order to exist. You can live by yourself in an apartment, go to the grocery store for your food, you go to a job, you come back, you get a paycheck. You're just not part of a group, a survival group. And in the end, you have a population, if you can believe the statistics, which with astronomically high levels of anxiety and depression and suicide and drug addiction. These are psychological troubles that small-scale organic tribal societies just really don't have. Suicide's just not a thing. It wasn't a thing among the Sioux in 1840, It wasn't something that anyone did. Because their tribe needed them. Like, what do you mean kill myself? Like, who's gonna make the baskets?
So is modern life founded on a lie or like a faulty conception of the human creature in terms of where we actually derive our deepest satisfactions? Because so much of it is about the meeting of individual desires and needs, right, as opposed to group identity.
Well, I think for most of human history, there were these competing values. There was the value of individuality and the value of belonging to a group. And individuality is an enormously powerful thing. Some guy invented the bow and arrow and changed everything. Likewise, the iPhone.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along.
That individuality flourishes in an environment of safety and protection and plenty, where you don't have to, hunt for your next meal. As soon as there's a crisis, people flip into group mode. I was in Sarajevo during the siege of Sarajevo. The older people had a great role in taking care of the children when the adults were busy, among other things, defending the city. There was no heat, there was no food, there was no nothing. The things that kill older people, right? And the older people survived. I went into this one cemetery, and during the wartime years, most of the gravestones in the cemetery were young people. And then as soon as the war ended, people in their 60s and 70s started dying. They were no longer needed. They were like, okay, I've done my job, I'm out of here. And they died of natural causes, right? The war was over, right? And suddenly you see all these graves of 60 and 70-year-olds in the cemeteries. It's very moving. It's like, they hung on long enough to make sure their families were okay. war is a terrible thing, but also to survive it, you need to find in yourself a tremendous sense of courage and meaning and purpose and clarity.
Every single person that got shot over there, they didn't worry about themselves one bit. All they asked about was, how are my guys?
I mean, the loss of ego that comes with a group endeavor, particularly one with super high stakes, the loss of ego is really a kind of a liberation. The last time I was in Sarajevo was 2015. The taxi driver was this sort of like middle-aged guy. And I said, oh yeah, I haven't been here since the war. He said, I was special forces during the war. He said, my job was to sneak out through the enemy lines and like fuck with them from behind. Classic, you know, like special forces operation, right? He said, yeah, that's what I did during the war. And he punched the dashboard. And he goes, and now I'm just a fucking taxi driver.
Yo.
Right, so tell me that guy didn't miss the war. Like, and he didn't miss the war, he missed who he was in the war.
Junger sees PTSD as primarily a social, not a psychological phenomenon. PTSD is a sort of hunger pang of the spirit, a yearning for the tribal ties soldiers felt in war.
I think what happens with soldiers is that they're put in an environment, primordial human group of 30 to 50 people, which is a platoon-sized element. In evolutionary terms, a classic human group, doing virtually everything together, relying on each other, counting on each other. You pick them up and you drop them down into America, which is diffuse and disconnected, and the suburbs are, you know, like soul death as far as I'm concerned. And suddenly you're an individual again in your like air-conditioned bedroom, and you're like, where did everybody go? People are at risk of suicide, not during military deployments, but afterwards. This isn't something that happens in the trenches. You know, what these soldiers have, in my opinion, is an entirely healthy human reaction to coming home from a close group to an alienating society. They're reacting in a psychologically healthy way. In the Plains tribes of North America, one of the ways they brought warriors back was to allow them to address their entire community individually and sing and dance and reenact and retell what they did on the battlefield to protect their people. And so it wasn't like we did this and you guys were at home shopping. It's like we all did this, right? Like, I mean, I actually pulled the trigger, drew the bowstring, but I did it to defend you guys, and now you're welcoming me home. You're hearing out what I did. We're all part of it. If I got blood on my hands, you got blood on your hand. You know, like if one of my brothers died, we all lost them. Like, it's all one thing. And of course, it's hard to feel all one thing in a society of 330 million. Individuality is a good thing, right? But it's not a good thing if that's all you have, and it leaves some of the more noble aspects of our character unused. It also deprives us of the incredible comfort and meaning that comes from being part of a group, a meaningful group.